We'll be getting to some of them in a very few minutes. You spent some time talking about how Christianity has become kind of a shield to some of the policies that these organizations want to pursue, and how unchristian some of them seem to be. And it's why you see splits within some religious communities over this. We just saw the Quakers, for example, suing over some of the immigration policies of the new
Mhm.
Trump administration. And this Mr. Buchanan we talked about as the Big Bang origin of a lot of this thinking, said as society we may be too compassionate for our own well-being or for an orderly and productive society. This is something you note that the Reagan administration ran into when the OMB director David Stockman tried to enforce some of the tenets of the early Reagan administration. He said, by 1982, I knew the Reagan Revolution was impossible. It couldn't happen in the world of democratic fact because you're cutting programs that even Reagan voters like, and we're seeing that now with Trump. So Christianity, you wouldn't think would play as important a role it is as it has in a country that started as not an anti-religious, but a non-religious country. We don't have
Yes.
a state religion like countries in Europe. So where does Christianity factor into this as a tool, a defense, or an offensive weapon?
Yeah, as an offensive weapon, excuse me, in very shrewd calculation. And this is an interesting thing too. I describe in the book how in the 1970s, Charles Koch, and the Buchanan was virulently anti-religious, and they loved Ayn Rand, who's profoundly anti-clerical, hates anything that suggests altruism or kindness or compassion, right? So they were very anti-religious, but they also faced this obstacle that they needed to get the votes to get the people in office to move the policies that they wanted to move. And so the political right and the religious right, and that's not just Koch, it's broader in that period, but really began to come together in the late 1960s and in the 1970s. So, Jerry Falwell, the Moral Majority, the groups like this, the Council for National Policy brings together the religious right that has now become full-on Christian nationalists with the fossil fuel donors, etc. So it is a very calculated effort to harness the power of religious faith, to harness the power of religious fear in order to move a political agenda. And my colleague and friend Ann Nelson wrote a fantastic book about this called The Shadow Network, about this Council for National Policy. And there's a great documentary based on it called Bad Faith, Christian Nationalism's Unholy War on Democracy. So you can really actually see with that film how this is played out and how prominent Christian nationalists were in the attack on our country on January 6th. So this is very much involved in the mobilizations for Trump, and also in, like, some of this goes off into, Pentecostal stuff that, there's no religious schools, there's no divinity school, school of theology. It's like you just put up your plaque and say, I'm, a church leader, and you can say what you want.
This goes back to the very early 19th century in this country too.
Yeah, but this notion that your fellow citizens are not just people who have different policy ideas than you, perhaps because they have different life experiences. No, they are demons. And so when you hear that language of demons, and if you start being alert to it, you'll hear it more and more. But that is coming from these Christian nationalists who want to make it so that we cannot possibly have a national conversation where we come together about, assessing where we are and what we need together as a people.